Hello and welcome to Opening the Gates to More Listings for Estate Agents with me, Simon Gates, and I'm delighted to be joined today by a returning guest, Verona Frankish. Verona, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me again.
You're very welcome. You were a very recommended guest originally, and then when I put a post out saying who should I have on the podcast, new or returning, your name kept coming up, particularly because it was a speedy episode.
Yes, it was.
Last time.
I was late for, I had a train disaster.
You had a
I think,
train
and I was
disaster.
late. So
Yeah, but I listened back to the episode yesterday on the train down to London. We actually jam-packed in so much into quite a short conversation.
Yeah, I think we did, yeah.
So to recap on that actual conversation was a year ago.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, and it started off by me saying it was actually our first ever one-on-one conversation.
It was, yeah. It's weird.
We spoke about how I felt, how brilliant it was, how approachable you are as a CEO. We talked about leaving Derry and coming over here. We talked about M&S, Marble Arch. We talked about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I've completely forgot about this, that you're a Man U fan.
I am.
So I don't know why on earth I've had you back on the podcast with that. And then, of course, we spoke about women in an estate agency.
Yes, we did.
So we packed in a lot. So to start with, in the second session, we're a year on from that conversation. What's the last year been like for you? What have you been up to?
Oh, crikey, as ever. I pack a lot into, even in that session, I pack a lot in. So yeah, I packed a lot into the last year. So the last year from a Yopa perspective, it's been a pretty transformational year, actually. We've another record-breaking year of performance, which we're all incredibly proud of. But I have an expression that I use quite a lot in the business and beyond the business, which is we haven't come this far just to come this far. So all I see in front of me, despite, I actually will have been at Yopa 4 years in the next few days. And it's quite phenomenal to think that I've been there 4 years because we've done a lot, but all I see is the opportunity ahead. And I think that's my nature anyway. Okay. So we've grown the business in the last year. We've grown the business by revenue by 30%. We've got tantalizingly close to profitability, which has been our goal for some time. We've launched our associate model. We've now got about 40 associates live and trading. I guess on the other side of what I consider a big part of what I do as Women in Estate Agency, we're about to, in 10 days' time, we're about to hold our 4th conference, and bigger and better than ever before. We've delivered leadership training to over 100 women in the last 12 months. We launched our Women in Estate Agency Charter, which is about to be rebranded and relaunched at the conference. So I won't necessarily steal the thunder on that one. And we've got big, bold plans for that too. So I also, in the last 12 months, became an ambassador, and I sit on the board for Agents Together. So I'm a proud mentor and have been for a number of years, but I now sort of support the steering of that group as well. So yeah, I think it's fair to say I packed quite a bit in.
I'm tired, just hearing it.
Oh, by the way, I'm also a mum of 3 and a wife and a sister and a daughter and all those things too, but yeah.
So let's start on, because the first thing I had on my iPad as things to discuss in the second session was 4 years at Yopa. Because I thought when I looked at LinkedIn, whether it was today or yesterday, I was like, it's around about 4 years. That has flown by, hasn't it?
It really has. Yeah, it's gone so quickly. And I think part of that is because we have packed a lot in, and the business has changed significantly in that 4 years. And funnily enough, we are actually going through a strategic review at the minute.
Okay.
And that was a strategic review that I initiated with the board over the last 6 to 8 weeks, because we're now at kind of a pivotal point in our evolution as a business. And Grenville Turner, who was the chair, is no longer chair, but a strategic advisor to the board, and of course ex-CEO of Countrywide and a real titan in the industry. Grenville is undertaking the strategic review, and the main reason for that is he did a review in 2019 of the business at the request of DMG, who are our main shareholders, to review. There was a requirement for funding at the time, and the shareholders wanted to know and get Grenville's view on the business and its potential for the future, and whether they should continue to support fundraising or whether they should say goodnight and close the doors. Thankfully, in 2019, Grenville could see that there was enough potential to continue to invest, but also made some very clear recommendations about some things that should change. So at our board meeting last week, Grenville played back his review in 2019, what he's finding today, both in terms of numbers, KPIs, cultural changes, the evolution of the business. And it was actually, we don't often take a moment to sit down, reflect, and look back at how far we've come. So it was kind of a nice moment coming up to my 4-year anniversary to review how far the business has come since 2019. Now, I'm by no means taking full credit for all of that work, because we all stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us. And, a lot of people put a lot of effort into the 6 years before I joined. But, the business is a very, very different one than it was in 2019. And I feel very proud of how far we've come in that time.
Amazing. In terms of the associate side of things, you said 40,
Yes.
yeah? Mm-hmm. Is that all different corners of the UK?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what, I don't know how involved you would be in terms of like conversations when people may be thinking of going down that route, but whether it's yourself, Tom, Frankie, what tends to be the main barrier between someone, let's say, exiting employment and going self-employed? What holds them back? What fears they have?
So I think there's a number of things. It's fair to say there's a range of different challenges, and a lot of that really depends on where an individual is at that point in their career, their journey. For some people, it is a nervousness about, do they back themselves enough? Do they have enough skills and experience in the industry, even though they've been doing it for 5+ years? For some people, it is the financial concern about I'm walking away from what I believe to be a secure job, when in reality we all know that most jobs are not secure. But there is a perception of a monthly salary, and we all know that actually the opportunity of the potential earnings quite often don't make up for the fear of loss of what I'm walking away from. And the fear of loss is greater in a lot of occasions than actually, I see that if I did exactly what I'm doing now, but for myself, the upside for me personally would be much greater. So that's obviously a concern for people. I think stepping into the unknown and actually away from that structured environment where they have to rock up every morning at 8:30 for their morning meeting. They are handed out a structure for their week. They are chased for their KPIs, and then it's walking away from that. Do I believe I've got the motivation or the discipline, probably more than motivation, to put those practices in place for myself? And can I hold myself to account? So for every individual that we speak to, those all show up in different ways and to different percentages in each. But those are probably the main concerns.
And what commonality do you see in the associates who really hit the ground running and are flying? What is it they do differently?
I think first of all, they are all in. So they're not hedging, right? So they're not saying, well, I'll do this for 6 months and then I'll think about how it's working. So they're always having a plan B, whether that's another job or they're keeping one foot in the door that they've left. So the first thing is 100% believing that you can and backing yourself to do that. So being all in. Setting themselves up with processes that and holding themselves to account for those. So giving themselves a very clear 30, 60, 90-day plan, and we work with them on that. So what does your first 30, 60, 90 days look like? What commitments are we going to make it's not a contract, but it's an accountability partnership to make sure that they are holding themselves to account and they've got the structure and the support to do so. Because unless you really commit to those processes on a daily basis in the early days, which when we all know you're not going to get. The minute you stick an image on social media to say I'm now on my own, you're not going to get an influx of of opportunities. You have to keep pushing with those processes consistently every day, and you see that happening. So a really good example, and I'll use Dave Garvey, who I know you know, is a brilliant example of this. Dave has, he lives in a big development, and he's been very systematically about how he approaches that. So when he has listed and sold a number of houses on that development. So he started very small, hyper local.
Yeah.
When he lists a property, he goes and introduces himself to the neighbor on either side. I think that might have been a little tip that you mentioned to him as well. But he does that, and that has opened up so many doors just having those conversations, that he does that every single time. So he doesn't do it on the day that he's got time or that he can be bothered. It is a consistent process, and that's just one example of a number of processes that when you're self-employed, you have to hold yourself to account for.
Yeah. When you, I have all these sayings, as you probably know, in my head, and I'm normally like really bad and I butcher them. But when you said earlier about being all in, it made me think of the saying, is it like burn the boats? Is that the saying, I think?
Yes, I know what you mean. I can't remember the expression, but it's exactly that, you know. So if you're leaving something behind, you have to close the door behind you and put yourself all in that room, because if you're leaving the door open and you've got one foot in here and one foot in there, you're not fully committed. But it's exactly the same thing.
And it's another saying, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Yeah,
exactly.
And then there was something I wanted to touch on with you, which we definitely didn't discuss last time. On your LinkedIn profile, March to August 2021, it said, and it is the exact words, taking a well-earned break. So what did you mean by that, and what did the well-earned break look like?
Okay, great question. I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that before. So I exited Purple Bricks in April of that year.
Okay.
On March or April, whatever date it was.
Yeah.
I had, up until that point, I have never been unemployed. I've never not been in employment. I've had 3 children during that period of time, and I had raised my children. I'd had maternity leave. And if anybody calls that a break, like, you're no longer my friend. I had 3 children, had maternity leave, and very, very, very short maternity breaks. So I had always been committed to being a working mum, always. And I talk to my children about this quite a lot. I know I'm a better mum because I go to work. And a lot of mums choose to be at home, and that is their choice, and I fully support that. But for me, I've always known that it meant that the time that I had was quality, and I knew that if I was at home all the time, I wouldn't be stimulating the parts of me that needed to be stimulated in order to be a great mum.
Yeah, okay.
And to be a good role model, because that's also important to me. So I made a very conscious decision as I exited Purple Bricks. I needed a break because I left an environment that I was not healthy, and I needed to take some space from that. I also knew at that point that I wanted to take some time to decide what was the next phase of my career. I was in, what year was that? 22?
21.
21.
Yeah.
So I was 51 at that time. So I knew that whatever I did next was probably going to be my kind of final big gig. I'm a very, very loyal person. I've worked for 3 companies really in my life, Marks and Spencer, financial services, but each company was bought by the next one. So it was one long tenure. And Purple Bricks. So I'd worked for 3 companies at that point. So I knew that whatever I did next would be probably the final big gig that I would do. So I wanted to be very intentional, and I also wanted to make sure I made the right decision. So the first thing on my agenda was to have some time with my children. So I was very intentional to have a summer with the kids. And I absolutely loved having the summer with the kids. It was great. And in that time, we also travelled a lot to Ireland to see my family because I was always feeling very guilty. I never spent enough time in Ireland. We ended up buying a house over there, which we then sort of set up as an Airbnb.
I was going to say, I've seen that on Airbnb. It's absolutely stunning.
It's a beautiful, we've actually sold it since,
Oh.
but it's a beautiful property, and we had a lot of happy times over the last 5 years in that house. But when I say I had a break, you know, I spent a lot of time with my family, both my own family, but my wider family in Ireland. We bought that property, and then by September, when the kids were going back to school, I felt very much like my brain was starting to go to mush, and I needed to get back into something. So at the time, somebody reached out to me, a guy called Luke Loveridge, and asked me to be. We got to know each other a bit, and asked me to be a strategic advisor on his business, which I then got involved with. I also did some other consultancy work for some different businesses, and that really helped me kind of get my brain back in the game. But also at the same time, I used it as an opportunity to do a lot of work on myself. And when I mean a lot of work on myself, just figure out what I wanted for the next phase of my life. My kids were older. They didn't need me as much anymore. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I went to High Performance Live. I went to Stephen Bartlett Live. I went to a lot of events. I read a lot. And I got myself in probably the best shape mentally that I'd been in for a while, because I'd come out of quite a difficult environment. So whenever then at the end of that year, a headhunter reached out to me about the Yopa role, I felt in tip-top shape. I felt like really in a good place. Not that I'm not saying I wasn't in a good place prior to that, but I think that break makes you realize actually I needed a break. So yeah, it was a phenomenal 9 months, whatever it was. Loved it, thoroughly enjoyed it, but it was also very good for me.
So I've always thought, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud actually.
Oh dear.
No, it's not a bad thing. The word headhunter, it's so brutal, isn't it? It's a brutal word, isn't it? Headhunter.
Yeah, I guess it
sounds
is.
like Grim Reaper or something, but it's a positive.
You're just ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a person, talent hunter, maybe might be
Talent
better.
hunter,
That's
yeah.
nice, kinder.
That's that's the better one. So I think in the last conversation we had when you're on the podcast, and in other conversations we had, speaking about imposter syndrome and you sharing vulnerability, when the Yopa position comes up and you're put forward for that, what am I trying to say here? If you hadn't have had the break you'd had and sort of finding yourself, do you think it would have been the same outcome, if you know what I mean?
I mean, it's difficult to know now in hindsight, because I can only talk to the experience I had. But I guess maybe if I was still in employment at the time, I probably wouldn't have entertained an approach, because, like I say, I'm incredibly loyal.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was just perfect timing. A lot of things aligned. And whenever she reached out to me, I said, you know, you've actually got me at a really good time, because I'm starting to think about coming back into kind of something full time. So that was really good time. And would I have? I probably wouldn't have entertained it, and maybe things wouldn't have ended up where they have. What I would say, though, is there is no doubt that I would never have been considered for the Yopa opportunity had I not had the Probobricks experience. What they were seeking at the time was someone with experience of property, technology, mortgages, conveyancing, all of which I had done, some of which I'd done at MAB, but all of which I had done at Probobricks. Right. So regardless of the good and the bad and the ugly that happened to Probobricks, actually, I wouldn't be here today had I not had the experience, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Cool. And on in terms of Probobricks, you're on the letting side, right?
So I entered as the mortgages director,
okay,
and then I was asked to take conveyancing and letting. So I ended up being the lettings MD.
So a couple of things. So what can how am I going to frame this? I have been to a couple of Mortgage Advice Bureau conferences, and a stat that I found incredible, and I'll get it wrong, but it was how I think within the Mortgage Advice Bureau network, and you're probably going to know the figures actually, but it was well over 50%, probably close to 100%, I think, of the clients who they'd retain. So it gets to the end of a 2-year fix, and then the person would come back.
Yeah.
Yet in estate agency and conveyancing, it's like 15% of buyers will go back and sell through that agent that they bought through.
Yeah.
So I guess there's easier for a mortgage broker because you know when that person's coming to an end of a mortgage, so you can pick up the phone 6 months before. But is there anything else agents could learn from the mortgage world in terms of how to, I don't know, maintain that relationship so that you do get repeat business?
So I think you're absolutely right. The key is the product end date that's due, and lenders are very good at preempting that end date. So brokers have to get ahead of lenders. So what they typically do better is connect with the customer from mortgage kind of sign up completion, and then in about 12 months time, because also there's the opportunity to sell further protection opportunities post the mortgage deal. And it's really good practice to connect with the customers to check in what's going on in their world, because they can, those different changes, whether they have children, whether they move jobs, whether they increase their salary, all of those things are opportunities. So they're much more immediate opportunities, and they're more obvious to a mortgage broker. The reality we know is that in this country, it's 7-8 years, maybe even more now, that people move. So that feels like, for an agent, a lot of effort for a small return during that time.
Yeah.
And there is, I guess, an element of, they'll come to me when they're ready type attitude. I think, look, just before we went live, we talked about AI and the tools that are available to us. It doesn't take a huge amount of effort now, given the tools that we have available, to nurture our customers over a regular period of time, whether that is a check-in, whether that's an anniversary on the first year they moved into the new home, whether that's you're in the area valuing, which you quite often will be, and just knocking on the door and just popping in to say hi. Little things, human touch, effort that make people think about you whenever everybody else is just going on with their daily business. But the reality of this agency world is, it is all about people. But unfortunately, in the sales world, it's too transactional, and we should be looking about client relationship for life, client value for life. In the mortgage world, we talk about client value for life a lot, lifetime value. We do not talk about that enough in residential sales.
So going back a step to when you talked about Dave Garvey and processes. So you got me thinking of, let's say someone doesn't move for a decade, and that kind of transactional mindset as opposed to lifetime value. But then I guess the average, I think a stat from Josh Rayner is the average person is in a role in this industry for like a couple of years.
That's scary, right?
So it's kind of like, well, why would I maintain that relationship with that person, because I'm not going to be here in a couple of years. So actually it's down to the business owner to make sure there is a process in place, no matter whoever is the agent dealing with that sell or purchase. It's irrelevant because the stats show maybe they're not going to be here. So have a process for and using AI, like you say, the world we now live in, but you can be doing that behind the scenes to retain that business.
Is it the business? Well, I guess it depends on the model that you're operating in, right? Because in a bigger business or in a branch type environment, absolutely, there should be business processes. But even as an agent, this business is becoming much more personal. Whether you are a personal branded agent or not, this business is becoming much more about your personal brand and your personal relationship. And we all know people buy people. So, if I was on the ground today and I was operating in a particular patch, I would absolutely be engaging with my customers on a face-to-face, whether that's, messaging through social media, whether that's keeping them updated about what's going on in their world, whether that's giving an updated view on the price of the value of their property. Because if you're not moving for 10 years, crikey, the valuations change significantly. And you could just drop something in to your customers' inbox. It might spark an interest in them. We all have a responsibility to create our own market. We all talk about how important the market dynamic is, but at a localized level, we have a responsibility to stimulate that.
I think it's such a good point on being a catalyst for someone moving home. You got to make things happen. And there's a couple of campaigns I would have shared with the associates and many other agents, and it's kind of called the Dream Campaign. So it's a dream price or a dream home campaign. So it kind of looks like this on social media. Finish this sentence for me. I'd sell my home for X. I would list my home this summer if I could get X.
Yeah.
And then the other one is out of curiosity, or finish this sentence. My dream home looks like X. And then another one I thought of the other day was, what's your maybe price?
Yeah.
And kind of the what's your maybe price, ... And you know, you might say, we all have that maybe price. If someone offered me X, I'd maybe consider a move. And I think that point you're saying where, you've got to stimulate that activity.
I'll give you a classic example. I've been in my home now for almost 22 years, which is a long time given that I work in property. And my husband scrolls.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah,
every single week. He sends me properties every single week, no joking. In fact, we went to see one this week, and the property is not right, but we are on the lookout for our next home, and we've never put our house on the market, right? And I'm not putting my house on the market until I have I have found something that is worth. Now, I could move very quickly, but the point of this is somebody connected with me and provided with me with some ideas on properties that might stimulate my interest, whether they were off market or whether they were out of my filtered criteria on the portals, then we would 100% consider moving. So there is an opportunity there for all the agents who live around me to figure out somewhere that I might want to live, right? And that's exactly how we all operate, I think. And
on your point of not looking to list your home till you find somewhere, that's 76% of the British public.
There you go.
Because we all, whether a particular industry, whether we admit it or not, we all go, "How my house will sell really quickly." So it's like, well, I need to find somewhere to go to before I list my own. And again, to your point of the catalyst, it's I'm in the same similar boat where I'm looking to move home, but I haven't put my house on the market because I haven't found anywhere. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah. I won't move unless I find the right property.
Yeah.
So I'm not prepared to up sticks and go and rent it.
Exactly.
Other people will.
Yeah.
I won't.
Yeah. So you've touched on AI a couple of times, and I'm going to seek forgiveness rather than permission from Simon Ledbetter and his WhatsApp group for 30 Years of Marketing. This is an interesting messaging. I think it was this morning, wasn't it?
It was.
And it hadn't even crossed my mind. And I thought, what a brilliant conversation to have with you today, considering like women in the estate agency, that in the AI world, I've not been seeing any women.
It's interesting, and the context for this conversation is Toby Martin was asked to attend a panel which was about AI, and it was being hosted by Annalisa Cotini, and he was looking at the people who were being considered for the panel were all male, and he said, we really want more diversity on the panel. Does anybody know any women in AI who are experts? And I said, oh my goodness, like I'm all over this. Brilliant question, but I literally do not know anybody. Simon then shared the photograph of the world's AI, which the world's AI panel or committee or whatever, and it's entirely men. And look, it's an evolving technology, so of course we hope that will change in time. But the question today is, how do we get representation from women? Because of course 50% of women are using AI and are affected by it, so why do we not have more AI experts? I felt like a woman in AI coming on. But it's a brilliant question. I don't know any, and we are knee deep in an AI strategy in our business, and the people that we are engaging with are men. So now, thankfully, in that group, there was a number of people who then brought some alternatives outside of the industry. But yes, there's minimal females in that sector right now, which is, a shame.
Yeah. And in terms of, so on the women's side of things, so by the time this goes out, the WIEA conference, not a conference. Is it WIEA not a conference? Is it WIEA conference, not a conference?
No, it's WIEA not a conference.
Not a conference. Verona gave me like a death stare when I said that, just for anyone listening. And remind me, is it the 4th or 5th one?
5th of March.
No, sorry, not the date. Is this the 5th one?
Our fourth conference on the 5th of March.
So I think when you were on last time, you said about that difficult second album.
Yes.
So what's it like when it's a fourth album?
It's an interesting evolution, actually, because the first one was, as we know, was unexpected, kind of delight and surprise the industry. And then the difficult second album was the one that we thought, okay, we now have to really up our game. I think since then, and once, like everything else in life and in business, once you have some proof points, some data, some evidence that you're on the right track, you get more confidence, right? And whenever you've had a good year and then a better year and then a better year, then at least you have confidence in your approach and on how you're going about it. And last year was our third, and we sold out last year. And as of hot off the press, we have 8 tickets left as of right now. So when this airs, we will be sold out again. So that gives us the confidence that we have the following and that people are buying what we are selling, although we're selling a concept, a movement, an idea, not particularly selling anything that you can buy particularly. But the point is, we have the industry now understands what we represent. I think we've created almost a brand that is deeply rooted in equality, empowerment, confidence, and working together with the industry to be hand in hand to thrive as an industry for the greater good of the entire industry. And each year we get more feedback, more evidence that what we're doing is working, which is amazing. And, just hot off the press at the minute also is that we now have over 5,000 women in our Facebook group, which is quite phenomenal when it started just after COVID with a couple of hundred. So clearly there's a demand, clearly that what we're doing is making progress. And, just a small thing, very small thing, but this is another proof point. Yesterday, there was an article in Pi, and it was about the house price index, about the house prices in December. And in that article, 4 or 5 years ago, would have been entirely male commentators.
Yeah. Okay.
And yesterday, it was 50-50 female and male. Now, that might seem, and a lot of people won't even notice that, but we notice it, and it matters to us, and it matters to women who feel underrepresented. So whenever the industry are representing its the members of its community equally, that feels like we're making progress. So this year we're super excited. We've got an incredible lineup. We've got an incredible agenda, incredible topics, and actually we're going into this year feeling, I guess, probably as confident as we ever have done, given the 4 years of insight and data and evidence.
Amazing. Well, I think I put on a post the other day when you kindly invited me to go on the WIEA podcast, that when I've been to previous years, you laugh, you cry, you learn, which I think is a great kind of combination there.
Absolutely.
To use all sorts of emotions throughout the day when you come on.
I think for me, the biggest difference about the WIEA conference and any other conference, and by the way, every conference has a place, right?
Yeah.
Every conference is trying to do something slightly differently. What we're trying to build is connection. And in the WIEA conference, I feel like we co-create an amazing day. Yeah. This is not we put on an amazing day and the audience rock up and enjoy it. Because the energy and because the community come together and it feels like a co-creation, that we're having a conversation almost, and that is what makes it so special, in my opinion.
Yeah, amazing. Something you mentioned earlier was Agents Together. Mm-hmm. So I love being part of it, and I've actually just started to mentor another mentee. And it's really nice when Kerry from Agents Together rings me up and says someone has specifically asked for you. It makes you feel amazing. And I've said it numerous times before, I wish it was a thing 10 years ago.
Likewise.
When I was an agent. It's fantastic. But it still baffles me that even with everything out there about it, there's still so many agents I come across when I go, have you thought about Agents Together? And I go, what's that? And I'm like, what? Yeah. Have you been living under a rock? So exactly. It's made a massive dent and it's doing brilliantly, but there's still so much work to be done.
Absolutely. And funnily enough, we had an ambassadors meeting this morning, and we've been talking exactly about that. And I think part of the problem is this, and they're also in attendance at the WIEA conference, so Agents Together are being represented, and we are collaborating this year on it's called WIEA Together Walk. So it's Agents Together and WIEA doing the walk for breast cancer now that we did last year in the Lakes. We're doing a similar one in September this year. But the reason I mention that is because one of the conversations we have a lot is a lot of people, don't know about it. So the more we can do to amplify the voice and help people understand that, the better. But also, a lot of people think that they will make really good mentees, but never consider themselves as a mentor. And I think a lot of people underplay their experience in the sector, and they underplay what value they can bring to someone else. So at the conference, the theme of the stand is going to be how can you pay forward the experiences that you've gained in the sector? How can you help another person? Because we feel really strongly, and I feel very strongly as a person, that whenever you've benefited from a lot of experience, it is your job to help someone up. Don't make it up the ladder and close the door. Help someone up, pay your experience forward, help them to be better. Because we all, if we care about this industry, we all want to elevate the industry, not just ourselves within it. And Agents Together is exactly about that. So I really hope that, you've got a great audience, Simon. So I hope that you talking about it and us having this conversation will help more people to have the courage to say, actually, I have something to bring to the party, to bring to the table, to help other people. But also, I've probably got lots I can still learn. And, I've been doing this job for a long time. I've still got loads to learn, so I have mentors. I learn from other people. So once you stop learning, once you think you've got to a point where you've got nothing else to learn, for me, that's when you go backwards.
Agreed. I think a common theme that comes up in all the high performers I have on the podcast is the importance of mentors.
Of course.
And I think just so many people just assume that like world-class operators, whether that's in business or sports or music, has just got like their shit figured out, so they don't need someone. And it's kind of overused, but it's like Tiger Woods still had a coach.
I was just going to use the golfing analogy. Exactly.
And they all have great. And I've just been watching. I got sent this link to, I think it's like a sneak peek to Tony Robbins speaking. It's just like incredible.
Yeah.
Like the motivation. Like I'm eating my lunch and watching it and being like, I want to get back to like it's in
Have you listened to his recent Stephen Bartlett pod?
No, I haven't.
It's fantastic.
Okay,
yeah, I highly recommend it. Similarly, he has that effect where you listen to the number of businesses that guy has, the level of discipline. He doesn't make the excuse that he doesn't work out on a Monday morning because he can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And it puts you to shame, but it makes you realize, that actually you have to hold yourself to account. You have to have processes in place. You have to learn from mentors. You have to always want to improve. He's a phenomenal, and he's probably an extreme version of, high level of discipline, but a very good one.
Yeah, well, I definitely, okay, so that's my listening on
Your
the train,
homework. Yes.
On the train home today. Right, is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you or you expected me
I wasn't quite sure
to
what
ask
to
you?
expect,
No,
to be honest.
Verona turned up and she went, what's the plan? I went, I don't know, I'm winging it.
No, I don't. I mean, we've covered kind of all parts of my kind of professional life, I guess. And, all of these, people ask me quite a lot, how do you juggle everything?
Yeah, I definitely asked you that last time,
Yeah, and somebody just asked it me today. And I guess the final thing I would say that kind of maybe pulls all of that together is that I genuinely do everything I do because I love every single element of what I do. And I've got to a stage in my life where if this is not bringing me joy or fulfillment or satisfaction, or I'm helping to help other people rise, then I'm not going to do it. I made a decision a long time ago. I don't spend time with people that don't add to my energy or my vibe. I don't have friendships or relationships with people that I don't want to spend time with. And it is the same professionally. I love what I do at Yopa. I feel so privileged to do what I do. The women in estate agency movement is literally, it burns inside me, and I feel like if I have an opportunity and a voice and a platform, I should use that for good, for things that matter to me. And women in estate agency and Agents Together are two things that matter to me a lot. So I think, just all of those things come together, and I'm so unbelievably lucky to get to do what I do.
And what's one question you don't get asked that people should ask?
who supports you to do all of those things?
Okay, so what's the answer to that?
So I am incredibly fortunate to be married to an unbelievable man who's the CEO of the MAB Foundation. He's worked for MAB for a very, very long time. And he now wants to give back to the sector that has given him his entire life. He spent all his life in financial services. And he has enabled me because he doesn't have an ego. He is incredibly proud of what I've achieved. He's an unbelievable father, and at home, frankly, he takes up more of the slack than I do. And that hasn't always been the case, right? Because over our career and when we were raising children, it was different. But right now, he knows that this is my moment, and he is very happy to allow me to shine. So I'm incredibly grateful to him.
Lovely. You've reminded me of, I can't remember where I would have heard or seen it, but in like a relationship where some days you're both going to be at like 100%, and some days, you know, I might be at 50% and you're at 100%. So can I borrow a bit of yours?
It comes from the principle of marriage is 50-50. It's not. Some days it's 90-10.
Yeah.
Other days it's 100-0. You know, and it's knowing that you can have that relationship to say, I'm a solid 10 today. I need you to be 90.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's really important to be able to have that transparency. And before I've taken any job, we've sat down as a family, my husband and my kids, and we've had a full conversation about it that says, this means that I will be away from home 3 nights a week. This means that I won't be around to do the school drop-offs. Are we all okay with that? Because if we're not, that's not what we're going to do. And, you know, in fairness, my kids have all been incredible supporters too, and very understanding of mum being away from home a lot.
I said to you when I saw you last week about the episode that your daughter appeared on with Kirsty's son and Matt's son, and yeah, I definitely wasn't that mature at their ages.
Me neither. You know, honestly, it's actually really emotional watching those kids articulate their feelings about their parents and being able to articulate their words in a way that was emotionally mature was just so joyous, and it made me very proud of all 3 of them. They were incredible.
I would recommend anyone actually listening or watching now to go check out that clip on. It would be on Estate Agent Showdown, wouldn't it? Correct. On Matt's YouTube channel to check that out. I tell you what, they should also check out. I thought it was hilarious, the Christmas special that Matt did with you, Russell, Ian, and Simon.
Yeah, it was funny. It was very entertaining. Lots of spice. I mean, we covered so much. We covered politics, estate agency, the economy. It was, but it was fun. It was actually a fun episode.
I'm surprised you managed to get politics in when Russell and Simon were in the room. Who would have thought that? I know. Right?
I had to keep them under control a little bit.
Yeah, I think you did well.
Thank you.
You did well. Right, final question, which I need to get from my phone because I don't have the Diary of a CEO conversation cards with me.
Oh,
but
yes, of course, yeah.
I have got a picture of one of them. So I now need to go to my messages to find it. So this is the first time I'll be seeing it. Where is it?
So is this Louise sent you a question card? Okay, great. Thank you, Louise, I think. Maybe.
Oh my God, what a question. Right, okay. You're given the chance and power to do one thing to save humanity and make everyone happy. What would that be?
Oh, what a question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Louise. One thing to save humanity. Okay. I have a reasonably simplified version or viewpoint on what makes successful businesses, relationships, communities, cultures, and it is you can be kind and care about people. And if you put people at the heart of your decision making, you won't go far wrong. And that means you sometimes can make really tough decisions, and I've in my career have had to make really tough decisions, and I'm really comfortable with making tough decisions because 99.9% of the time I'm really sure that it's the right thing for the person and for the business, right? Even though it's tough, it's still right. But I've always made those decisions and delivered those messages with kindness and with love and with care. So I think if we are to save humanity, if everybody could be kind to each other and think of their decision making and deliver them with love and care and kindness, then a lot of what is destroying us as a population would be eliminated. And that's very utopian, I understand, but that was a tough question. So
It was a tough question. I think I would have said this before. I don't know if I've said to you actually, but there's now a third release of the conversation cards. I don't know if you've got that.
No, I don't.
There's a third box. I spent half a day recording content from the first two boxes, and I asked all those questions of guests, so I roughly know what's coming.
Yeah.
So that's easy. I've asked the questions, and I sat down and had a camera in front of me, and I had to answer them. And then when you get a question like that come out, you go, oh my God, like, how am I?
What would you have said to that question?
I need to read it again. You were given the chance and power. This I don't think this is one I would have answered in the recordings. You're given the chance and power to do one thing to save humanity and make everyone happy. What would that be? It is such a difficult one, isn't it? Save humanity. Oh, God. It makes me think of, I don't know if it's going to make much sense, but it makes me think of, it's not necessarily a saying, but in a world where we've never been so connected, we've never been so disconnected. Mm-hmm. So as much as social media is incredible, and, you know, various people have built businesses on social media, it's certainly helped me. I feel like if I could do one thing to save humanity is kind of tell people, spend less time on your phone. I'm talking to myself in this, and spend more time in the moment.
Like this.
Yeah. So I think sort of the last point I'll make on it, I'm a big fan of Sahil Bloom, and I've been to see him speak a couple of times I can't remember if it was 24 or 25. And he was working a corporate job. He was living the life that he thought would make him happy, earning loads of money, beautiful wife, nice big house, etc., etc. I think he was living on the West Coast in America. And he had lunch or coffee with a friend, and they said, "How are you?" And he did the classic answer of, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I think Rob Brady says "fine" stands for feeling inwardly negative.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is, but he does this Friday thing. Yeah.
And the friend of Sahil then says, "But how are you actually doing?" And I think that's really important, particularly for men, is when someone says, "Yeah, I'm fine, or I'm not too bad," ask again. It's important to ask again. And he just, I think, let out, he's not feeling great, and the friend goes a bit more into it. And I think the friend then says to Sahil something along the lines of, how often do you see your parents? There was this thing to the parents, and he's like, once a year. How old are they? And Sahil says how old they are, and he says, do you understand, with the life expectancy in America and you seeing them once a year, you're only going to see your parents 15 more times in your life? And he just went, whoa.
Yeah.
Within, I think, 30 days, and I forgot to say, sorry, that him and his wife were also struggling to conceive, and a lot to do with the stress I think he was having. Within 30 days, he quit his high-flying job, sold the house, and I think they moved back to the East Coast to be close to parents, who now see all the time. And they then, quickly after that, I think, had their boy. Mm-hmm. I'm really going off on one now, but I think that the other thing that really hit with me that he said was the things you complain about now you dreamt of 5 years ago. So I think he was in his home office doing some deep work, and this little 2-3-year-old boys, being as you know toddlers are, was at his feet misbehaving, and he found himself about to be like, what are you doing? And as he's about to say, what are you doing? You know, Daddy's working, it's really important. He went, hang on a minute, I'm complaining about the exact thing I was pleading for a few years ago. So yeah, I think that's where my brain's gone with the question, is that we're all so busy in life and we're stuck with devices. I appreciate it's ironic when we're recording a podcast, but hopefully someone will come away from listening to this conversation and go, "Do you know what, that's been the kick up the backside, but I do need to go send that message to someone or go have that meeting."
Yeah.
And
just to add to that, I have also a kind of a tactic that I use when there's times, look, even with everything that I've got on and how busy I am, and as much as I know how privileged I am, don't get me wrong, I still have days where I get dragged down into, how much I have to do. And I very quickly remind myself and it's just by simply changing the words from I have to do, as I have to do the school run, or I have to go to London, or I have to do X, I get to do.
Yeah.
And when you change that and frame it very differently in your mind, I get to have kids, to have a car, to be able to drive them to school, to have the time and the flexibility to do that. I get to do a job that I love so much that takes me to London to see incredible things. And just by reframing that in your mind makes a complete big difference to how you see the world.
So true. You've it's not 100% directly relevant to what you just said, but I said this on the podcast with Matt Giggs recently. I heard Alex Hormozy say it, and it was along the lines of, if you can wake up in a bad mood for no reason, you can wake up in a good mood for no reason. And that really hit me. So yeah, sometimes I just wake up and today's gonna be a shit day.
Yeah.
But then why can you not wake up and go, do you know what? Today's gonna be a great day and have no reason for it. So
Yeah.
cool. Right. Everyone at home, watching, listening, please do remember, like, review, subscribe, share, follow, because if you do all that fancy stuff, it means I can get exceptional guests like Verona on the podcast. And that just leads me to say, Verona, thank you very much for being an amazing returning guest. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.